Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a truly fascinating analysis from the Property Economist. We're unpacking how rent control, which, is usually debated as a simple landlords versus tenants issue, actually impacts property valuation, new construction, and, surprisingly enough, the entire banking sector in Ghana. It's basically a deep dive into the unseen math that governs the spaces we live in.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a seemingly counterintuitive question. What if a policy that's explicitly designed to help tenants could, mathematically speaking, trigger a systemic collapse of the housing market? I mean, we often hear about rent caps as this protective shield for renters, right? But the source material we're looking at today argues that this well-intentioned regulatory tool might actually be dismantling the very system it is trying to regulate.
To really grasp why this matters so much, we have to look at the stakes. 1.8 to 2.2 million. That number represents Ghana's massive current housing deficit. We are not talking about a market with abundant empty homes here. This is a severe shortage. Every single policy decision made in this environment has massive ripple effects, which makes getting housing policy right not just important, but absolutely urgent.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, the rent control illusion. Second, the arithmetic of value. Third, freezing new construction. Fourth, the hidden financial risk. And finally, policies that actually work.
All right, part 1, the rent control illusion.
Now, before we get into the math, we absolutely have to acknowledge the very real, everyday struggles that Ghanaian tenants are facing right now. The push for rent control is born from genuine hardship. Tenants are frequently facing staggering demands of 6 to 24 months of advance rent. That easily locks low-income households completely out of formal housing. Meanwhile, university students are dealing with chronically overcrowded hostels in areas like Ayudazi, Kotai, and Bomzo. Because of these severe hardships, the rent control department frequently threatens to cap or roll back rents. It's presented as the obvious immediate remedy to the crisis, but as the analysis warns, this might just be an illusion.
Which brings us to part 2, the arithmetic of value. Now, what's really interesting here is how the source text completely dismantles the popular perception of rent control using pure valuation mathematics. It shifts the entire conversation from emotion to cold, hard arithmetic. To grasp this, we have to understand how banks and investors actually value a building using the income capitalization formula. Basically, property value equals net operating income divided by the capitalization rate. Think of a building like a business. Its market value isn't based on the cost of the concrete or the steel used to build it. It's the present value of its future net income, discounted for risks. In a market like Ghana, that risk might be reflected in a 12% capitalization rate. So if you mess with the income, you instantly mess with the underlying value of the property itself.
Let's actually walk through a micro example from the text to see this in action. Imagine a 50-room hostel in Ayudazi. If a regulatory rent cap drops that hostel's net income from 800,000 cedis a year down to 450,000 cedis, that formula we just talked about kicks in. It instantly destroys 44% of that building's value. That means 2.95 million cedis of private wealth is simply vaporized. Just like that. Just let this quote from the text sink in for a second. No brick removed, no room demolished. The rent commissioner signed an order and 2.95 million cedis of private wealth ceased to exist. The tragic irony highlighted in the report is that this massive destruction of equity doesn't really hurt large institutional landlords. They can just diversify and shift their capital elsewhere. It primarily hits small Ghanaian families who pulled bank loans and decades of pension savings to build these exact hostels. The state hasn't physically taken their building, but it has expropriated their equity.
Moving on to part 3, freezing new construction.
So, we just saw how value is destroyed in existing buildings. And this brilliantly illustrates how that destruction sends a chilling, undeniable signal to property developers everywhere, perfectly captured by the simplified De Pasquale-Wheaton model. Step 1, cap rent. Step 2, drop value. Step 3, kill supply. Step 4, create a permanent shortage. Imagine a developer appraising a brand new 100-room hostel. They don't just look at today's rent, they have to ask if tomorrow's rent commissioner might cap their future income. If the answer is even possibly, the math turns negative. They just stop building. The supply response literally needed to fix the housing deficit dies right there on the drawing board.
And this isn't just theoretical modeling. The text shares historical proof showing this is pretty much a universal economic law. For instance, a study by Stanford economists found that rent control in San Francisco actually reduced the rental housing supply by 15%. Landlords simply converted regulated units to other uses or just exited the market entirely. The ultimate irony here?
The very people rent control is meant to protect, like those students in Ghana, end up competing for an even smaller pool of unregulated, deteriorating units.
Let's move to part 4, the hidden financial risk.
Okay, let's see how this builds. Scaling up to a macro-level threat facing the entirety of Ghana's financial system. Think back to the 2007 U.S. global financial crisis. Inflated housing prices fell, meaning the collateral backing trillions in loans crashed, which impaired bank balance sheets worldwide. Well, the Ghana rent control risk is a mirror image distortion of that. Prices aren't falling from market oversupply, they're being artificially suppressed by government fiat. But the result is absolutely identical. The real estate collateral backing bank development loans gets heavily degraded.
To really put this financial stability risk into perspective, we've got to remember this number: 21 billion cedis. Ghana's commercial banking sector is already carrying elevated non-performing loans. The 2017 to 2019 banking crisis required a massive 21 billion cedi bailout. Because banks lend confidently against property values, introducing a policy that systematically shrinks those values is a grave systemic danger. If the collateral deteriorates, credit capacity basically contracts for the whole economy.
So the absolutely crucial point here is captured perfectly in this quote from the source. The financial stability argument against rent control is not theoretical, it is arithmetic. The author views rent control not just as a housing debate, but as a direct mathematical threat to the balance sheets of every single lending institution in the country that holds real estate collateral.
Which leads us to part 5, policies that actually work. We've looked at the grim math of rent caps, sure, but the source material doesn't just point out the problems. It actually shifts focus to practical, supply-side solutions to solve the housing deficit without breaking the banks. The analysis synthesizes 4 clear alternatives. First up, increase supply directly through developer incentives, things like tax holidays and long-term land leases to lower production costs. Second, increase transparency by publishing a credible quarterly rental market index to expose genuinely exploitative pricing. Third, ease tenant cash flow simply by enforcing the existing 1963 Rent Act. This act already makes it illegal to demand more than 6 months of advance rent. Doing this would help tenants immediately without destroying capital. And finally, modernize and reform the obsolete 1963 Rent Act entirely to protect tenants without arbitrarily capping landlord income.
The math laid out by the Property Economist presents a pretty stark choice. Will we choose an illusion that seemingly protects tenants today, but mathematically guarantees a permanent housing shortage and a banking crisis tomorrow? Or will we choose supply-side policies that actually build the 2 million homes Ghana desperately needs? Thank you so much for following the logic with me through this explainer. I really hope this encourages you to always look a little closer at the invisible arithmetic behind public policy.